Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Europe House. My name is Mykola and I'm the Deputy Ambassador of the EU to the United Kingdom. So for those of you who have never been before to our premises, a special welcome to you. Particularly pleased to see so many diplomats show out tonight in support of Ukraine. Thank you very much. We've hosted a lot of events on Ukraine in the last 2 years here. This is the first one, I think, that we have done on a very distressing topic, which is the forcible transfer of Ukrainian children to Russia and the occupied territories. According to the Ukrainian authorities, over 19,000 children have been taken in this way, and there are many very disturbing reports of these children being sent to military re-education camps, particularly in the occupied Crimea and Chechnya. It is, I think you would all agree, a frankly horrific problem and horrific development in the ongoing invasion. I'll say a little bit about what the EU has done, and then I will welcome our speakers. So we, the EU, and I think all of our Western partners, have condemned these deportations in the strongest terms. We have, since July 2022, imposed sanctions against 39 individuals responsible, including Vladimir Putin. In March 2023, the ICC issued arrest warrants against the perpetrators, and the EU continues to identify perpetrators for further measures. Tonight you'll hear from our speakers firsthand what strategies Russia is applying in the temporarily occupied territories in Ukraine. We are honoured to host this event with Save Ukraine and the Ukraine Institute. We're particularly delighted to welcome Mykola Kuleba from Save Ukraine. He is the former Presidential Commissioner for Children's Rights under 2 different presidents, and he's the founder and CEO of Save Ukraine, which is the biggest organisation that provides evacuation for women and children from combat zones. It's also the biggest network that returns children from Russia and the occupied territories. I'm also warmly welcome Yulia Ioffe, who's a lecturer at the University College London, and you have been researching, Yulia, the forcible transfer of children now for the last 2 years. I shall leave it there, and I'll now welcome Olesia Kromachuk, the director of the Ukraine Institute, to say a few words. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have the honor of giving a slightly longer introduction to our speakers, so you get to learn about their work a little bit more. First of all, thank you so much for coming out here tonight. My name is Olesia Kromachuk. I'm the director of the Ukrainian Institute London. For those of you who don't know about us, we're an independent charity that champions Ukrainian culture and shapes the conversation about Ukraine in the UK. So if you don't know our work, please visit our website or follow us on social media and so on. I'd like to also thank the European delegation and Save Ukraine for co-organizing this event. And we're so glad to be in Europe House again. We've had lots of fruitful collaborations in the past 2 years here, and it's wonderful to be hosted here again. It means a lot to us. I also want to thank Anastasia Hayevska, who's sitting right there, who's doing her internship at the Houses of Parliament and was the author of this idea of the event and put a lot of time and effort into making it happen. So thank you, Anastasia. So as you know, we'll be speaking about the deportation and forcible transfer of Ukrainian children to Russia, and also the strategies to hold those responsible for Russian war crimes accountable, which I believe is a very important part of our discussion. We've got fantastic speakers to deal with this extremely important topic. I'll just go through their bios in a bit more detail. Maria Lvova-Belova is the founder and head of Save Ukraine, Commissioner of the President of Ukraine for Children's Rights between 2014 and 2021, head of the Kyiv Children's Service between 2006 and 2014, and co-founder of the Ukraine Without Orphans Alliance. As Commissioner of the President of Ukraine for Children's Rights, he united and coordinated the government and the public sector to develop a cohesive state program that creates effective mechanisms for preventing, detecting, and combating human trafficking and providing assistance to victims of human trafficking. He initiated the reform of state-run institutions for children and co-authored the national strategy for the institutionalization. He created policies and introduced penalties to protect children from bullying, including cyberbullying. With Russia's invasion of Crimea and eastern Ukraine in 2014, Mykola founded the Save Ukraine Rescue Network, which coordinates dozens of organizations, volunteers, individuals, and legal entities to help internally displaced persons, with specific emphasis on children. Save Ukraine has evacuated over 100,000 people from the frontline territories. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, Save Ukraine has been engaged in the return of deported children to Ukraine and has returned almost 400 forcibly transferred children back to Ukraine from Russia and the temporarily occupied territories. And Mykola will be in conversation with Dr. Yulia Ioffe, who's a lecturer in law at University College London and an expert on children's rights and migration. Previously, she clerked for Judge James Crawford and at the International Court of Justice, and worked at the UNHCR representation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the regional representation for Belarus, Moldova, and Ukraine, and Ukrainian Red Cross Society. Thank you so much for being here with us. The floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I think we had a little bit of introduction now that there has been a systemic and extensive practice of forcible transfer of Ukrainian children. However, it started already in 2014, but in 2022, the practice, the scale really increased, and the numbers are from 20,000 to 700,000. And 700,000 is actually the number that is provided by the Russian Federation because they claim that they are evacuating and saving these children. So just to provide a brief background in terms of the categories of these children, so these are both accompanied and unaccompanied children. So children are moved to Russia, forcibly moved with their families, but we will be focusing today mostly on unaccompanied children and separated children. So these are children in Ukrainian state institutions that are in occupied territories, orphanages, boarding schools, but it's important to know that many of these children are not true orphans. A lot of children were just in hospitals, in treatment, had families, but still were forcibly transferred to Russia. Many were captured in the battlefield during hostilities. So many of these children have parents, but they were still moved to Russian Federation or occupied territories, subjected to adoption by Russian parents, indoctrinated, re-educated, put in military education. So with all this background, with so many children being moved, forcibly transferred to Russia, Mykola, can you please briefly tell us how many children you were able to return, and can you describe their physical and psychological condition of the children who returned, and what kind of support and rehabilitation do they need?
Thank you so much. First of all, we're so grateful that here in London you come to this event and standing with us, fighting with us, and amplify children's voices who've been kidnapped, who are staying on occupied territories. It is a tragedy for Ukraine, for our nation, because every day these children suffer, and many of them cannot understand what happened around, why they should stay there, what happened in this school, why they forced to sing Russian songs or to sing anthem, why they are forced to listen huge propaganda in their schools, or like in Soviet Union, they did not know this before, but now they are marching with Russian songs near the school, and some children reporting us that the Russian caregivers they traveled to Moscow to listen Russian propagandists, Medvedev, former President Solovyov. Can you imagine that from occupied territories, children traveling to Moscow just to listen days of Russian propaganda? It's a Russian strategy. It's a genocide. Russia commit genocide, annihilating Ukrainian identity and to instill hatred towards Ukraine, militarize our children, and to prepare them to next stage of war with the West. Because children learn in their schools they should be prepared well to fight against the West. And now we investigate in some cases of soldiers, Russian soldiers, who've been captured and now they are in Ukrainian prisons, but they've been school children in Donbass. And after 2014, they've been brainwashed, and now they've been captured as Russian soldiers, and thousands of young adults who are fighting as the Russian soldiers, they've been Ukrainian children. It's a Russian strategy. And I am telling you one story, just one of the last stories. Today we returned 9 kids. 2 of them are orphans and from occupied territories. And it's altogether 270, maybe 4 kids who've been returned, and 70 of them are orphans. And one of our last returns, it was the grandmother with 3 orphans, and she's a guardian of these children, and she tried to return them, but Russia deported her. And when she'd been on the occupied territory, she tried not to send children to school, but Russian soldiers came with a weapon, and they told her if her kids, first of all, they told her that these children belong to Russia and you must send them to school. If not, you will be deprived of parents' rights. And we hear a lot of stories like this story, horrible stories, when children forced to receive Russian passports, forced to go to military academy, forced to do something what they don't want to do. Yeah. And it's a huge trauma for these kids, and that is especially now what we've seen, that teenagers who are 15, 16, 17 year old, and they clearly understand that very soon they could be mobilized to the Russian army, and they trying to flee the Russia, but it is very, very hard for them. And we are receiving these calls on our hotline to help them to be extracted from Russia, and we trying to find a possible way how to take them to Ukraine. And we have some cases when we help them, but sometimes it's very hard because their parents don't want to. Some parents are pro-Russian and they want to stay in Russia, but children don't want. They clearly understand that they could be taken to Russian army, and it's very hard circumstances, but we're trying to help these kids too. Yeah, it's not a lot of like these stories, because what we have now, that when we connect with these kids, many of them really afraid to communicate. They're afraid, and sometimes it's the same answer. I love Russia. I don't want to come back to Ukraine. I want to stay in Russia. The same. We understand that they learn this in their schools, and that FSB very often provoking them and have a special classes for children to teach them what answer if somebody calling from Ukraine. Yeah, and I'm so sorry. I understand that I maybe not answer clear on your question.
That was excellent.
But I'm trying to draw a picture what the last information we have from kids who've been returned from their relatives or from guardians, because it's a huge pain for us when we understand what happened with the hundreds of thousands of kids who are staying there. Not only that 700,000 in Russia, but on occupied territories, because for the last 10 years, we lost, I will explain why I'm telling lost. We lost more than 1 million of children's population, because all of them have Russian passports on Russia, on occupied territories. Many of them grew up with this propaganda, and many of them hate Ukraine, and not only Ukraine, but hate the West. Yeah, and that's why I'm telling we lost a lot of them, and we try and understand how to build effective communication with that young adults and that children to tell them true. Because Russia, very isolated country, as you know, and the children have no access to hear true. What happened? They believe, we return children, and many of them believe that Nazi could kill them in Ukraine. They believe. And many of them we cannot return because they're telling, we know that Nazi will kill us. We learned this from our families, from television, from internet, from our teachers, and we need more time just to convince them they can safely come back.
Thank you. Just to follow up, and of course it doesn't surprise me that these children say that they love Russia, because Maria Lvova-Belova, Russia's child rights commissioner, herself told the story of Mariupol children, one of whom she adopted herself, and said that they were singing Ukrainian anthem, but then she taught them how to love Russia. So unfortunately, it is part of, it seems to be a part of the state policy. I just wanted to follow up on indoctrination specifically. When you are successful in returning these children, what is the process of working with them, reintegrating them in Ukrainian society? Do you have support of the government, of the partners, or what kind of support is needed? And also not only with regard to children, but also their families. You mentioned the grandmother who was deported. I'm sure that was very traumatic for her as well, and also being separated from your own children and grandchildren. So I understand that it probably takes a lot of time and effort, but if you can elaborate on that, that'd be great.
Just now we started to develop a special program for deprogramming children together with universities and experts, because we understand that it should be a special program for these kids, for their families. But Save Ukraine model from several steps. First of all, we finding kids through the open sources, through the calls on our hotline, social media. We receive this information, we communicate with the relatives, with children, and second step is return. I cannot tell you a lot about how we are doing this because it's very confidential, but we are returning the children. It's very, very dangerous, and sometimes we have huge problem there, and but we return 274. We have success. But another thing is it's a system of our services. We have 6 hope and healing centers where we provide rehabilitation of children and their families. We have centers for families with children. We have Hope and Healing Center for orphans. And we now try to launch one more center, one shelter for orphans. And we have one center for children who experience sexual abuse. And this year we want to open one more center for these kids. And after 6 months rehabilitation program, we provide integration. and we integrate them into local communities if this child has a family. But for orphans, we place these kids to foster families. We are working with the government. We have a special governmental coordination center who are responsible for deinstitutionalization and for placing kids to foster families. We are effectively working with them, and they help us to find a family for these children. And we are building modular houses. It's especially for families with children with disabilities. This modular house is accessible for kids with disabilities, and we placing them in safer areas and send these families with children to live in these modular houses. But we are sometimes renting premises for these families, and now we want to build a program to build a multi-flat building for these families and help them to have long-term accommodation. And we need a special program, and we are talking with the governments, with the business, just to help us to build more centers and to replicate this model, because it's not enough. If we want to scale a number of kids to return number of kids, it means that we have to be capable to help them, to rehabilitate them. That's why we are working with the Ukrainian government, and we are working with the governments of with the UK government too, just to receive enough support to provide humanitarian support, accommodation, trauma therapy for kids who've been kidnapped and who stayed on occupied territories.
Thank you. You also mentioned the military education. Could you please clarify whether all children are subject to some kind of military training? Because we know that children are of various ages, so it can be just a couple of months old, toddlers, but also teenagers who are 16, 17. Does Russia target boys, teenage boys specifically? And is it part of their policy to conscript them to their army, and that's why they're targeting them specifically to forcibly transfer them to Russia?
Their militarization program started from kindergarten. They have a special subjects for kids just to learn how to glorify Russia, and you can find in the school subjects about Russian history, I don't remember the name of this subject, when they try to teach children that it's very prestigious to be a military, that you will be loved and everybody respect you, and they try to, for me it's manipulation, but motivate children to go to the military academies. And just maybe 1 month ago we returned 18 years old boy who been brainwashed, who been sent to military academy, and you could find in his social media how he glorified Putin and he was happy, and before that we tried to extract him, but that lady who went, his godmother, she'd been deported. And after that, this boy in social media told, they try kidnap me, but I want to stay in Russia. And then he called to us and told, I want to escape. He understood that very soon he could be sent to Russian army and he could die. And we helped him. I met him in Warsaw. I was speaking with him. He totally brainwashed. He lived in Russian family. He's an orphan. He lived in a Russian family. And I don't want to spend your time just to telling everything what he told me. But I understand how these children poisoned of this propaganda. And we are thinking how we can deprogramming these kids, how we can help them. Because even if we will not be able to return a child, but if we can stop militarization of this child, if we can stop that this child make decision to go and fight and die for Russia, it will be great thing for a life of this child. But I told you in the beginning that we investigating now these Russian soldiers who've been Ukrainian school children, and many of them asking us, don't send us back to Russia. We are ready to sit in Ukrainian prison, but please don't change us. Don't send us back to Russia.
Thank you. It's a heartbreaking story, and of course, conscripting occupied population to the Russian army is a separate war crime. But thinking, as a lawyer, thinking about international law and transitional justice, about litigating forcible transfers of Ukrainian children, this would constitute multiple violations of international law. But I wonder, in your conversations with these children who returned, and potentially the ones who are deprogrammed or were not entirely indoctrinated, what is their opinion? How Russia should be accountable? Do they have any thoughts about bringing them to responsibility?
It's a very hard question for these kids, because many of them were threatened, and from the beginning they don't want to tell anything. But I will tell you one story. 13 years old boy, he's an orphan. He's been in Russian family. We extracted him, and he's in Ukrainian family. And first maybe 6 months, he didn't want to tell anything. Psychologists work with him, but one day when I came to our rehabilitation center, he came to me and told, "Can you give me journalist? I want to tell everything." I told, "Are you sure?" And it was some my friends from US who came there. They were not journalists, but he asked me, "I want to tell this man about my story." An hour he was sitting and telling his story. When I stopped him and told, please stop. Yeah, and it was like, you know, he was very angry. What happened with him? He realized that time what happened only after 6 months. A 13 years old boy. But sometimes it's a long time before a child realized that what happened with him, why it happened. Because before, when we extracted him, he told, "Why are you telling that they kidnapped me? They've been evacuated me. Russian evacuated me from a danger." I told, "How do you know?" "They told me about it. They saved me." I told, "Okay, stay with this, no problem." And children need more time just to understand what happened with them, why it happened. But I asked him, but before the war, what happened with you? Did you live well? He told, "Yeah, but who invaded you? Why they should save you? First they invaded, and then they saved you. Who asked them to come? Did you want? No." But you know, it's what happened with child's brain. How this Russian propaganda, this poison, how affected these children's brains. They need more time just to return to reality. That's why we need more psychological support, more professionals who could work. And you know, I'm calling our services love and care services. They need love, they need care, they need anybody who could hug and who could just sit and talk with this child, yeah, and convince that child can grow in a safety, yeah, and be loved. It's very important for a child.
Thank you. A very moving story, and of course, it's really important truth telling as part of accountability for Russia's actions. Today is also almost 1 year since the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants against Putin and Lvova-Belova. Have you noticed any changes in Russia's behavior afterwards? Did it become more difficult to extract children, to return children, or was there any change in your operation since then?
Yeah, we've seen that after that, Russia immediately tried to stop any rescue missions or block this. And if before sometimes we had deported relatives, but now 90% of relatives who are going to Russia to take their kids are deported. They're really afraid that these children who are witnesses of war crimes could be documented and Russia will stand in tribunal. They really blocking any rescues. They don't want to leave all of these children before they will brainwash totally and before they will grow up and will be able to say, no, I don't want to come back. It happened there. That's why my answer, it's much harder now to return a child from Russia. They're really afraid of punishment.
And have you noticed any changes in terms of adoption? Because we've seen also before the arrest warrant, just on regular social media, on the website of Commissioner Lvova-Belova, the numbers, thousands of Ukrainian children adopted by Russian parents and how Russian parents are receiving ideological education. But it does seem to be the case that some of this information is hidden now. Do you have any information whether the adoption stopped or are they still happening but in secret?
Yeah, it's a top secret now. They're really afraid that because this warrant order, as you understand, it's through the adoption process because they they advertised many kids who could be adopted, and Maria Lvova-Belova and her friends took Ukrainian children from Mariupol, different areas, but after warrant order they cleaned all social media. You will not find now proposal to take Ukrainian child to a family, and the legislation was totally changed, and they simplified adoption process. They simplified receiving Russian citizenship. That's why now it's very simply. Maria Lvova-Belova stated that we are not adopting Ukrainian children, and it's true. They're adopting Russian children because first they give Russian citizenship to Ukrainian children and they adopt Russian children. Yeah, it's very hard to find this information, and especially for toddlers. Yeah, they will not inform. They cannot. That's why Russians who know this, we're trying to find any information. They're really afraid to inform about it. Yeah, but just today we received some information about adopted children too. We're investigating this, but it's very hard. It's very hard, and it is a real crime. But I think for the last 10 years, it was not only adopted, but fostered, adopted thousands of children. I think it's more than 10,000 Ukrainian children who've been adopted.
And as we know, the adopted children or foster children, in many cases, their names are also changed.
Yeah.
Is there any...
Sorry, it's not only names. What we've seen, their social media cleaned or banned, their phone number changed. It's very hard. It's not only name and last name, date of birth, but any сліди, я не знаю як, it's traces, any traces. It's very hard to find this child.
I mean, especially with what you mentioned with toddlers or babies, I would imagine if all the traces are erased and the names are changed and birth certificates are reissued, is there a need to, for example, establish a DNA registry in Ukraine with some DNA samples from parents or relatives who are seeking their children, especially the ones who were abducted when they were just a couple of months old?
I know that on the governmental level we have this discussion how to create this. We have our own database. We are building database through our investigation, but we cannot have DNA tests because we are not. It's only government can collect this DNA information. But we've been discussing with different countries. It's really important to have this DNA data. It's important.
So, as we discussed, it seems that arrest warrants at least pose some practical difficulties with returning children. Do you think the International Criminal Court or domestic courts of other countries should issue more arrest warrants? Potentially not for Putin or Lvova-Belova, but potentially for a smaller, for Belarusian leaders, but also potentially for smaller figures, bureaucrats, mayors, heads of orphanages in Russia. Would that be helpful? Or alternatively, potentially you have any other suggestions?
It should be done. It should be done. All from Putin and all decision makers, and especially that who've been implementing this legislation, who send children for adoption or just to Russian families for guardianship or for foster care, and to orphanages, and especially who've been kidnapped and who help with this forcible deportation. And we have to identify all of them. It's thousands of people on different levels, not only in Putin's administration, but on the local level. And we have to do it immediately. We have to give this sign that we will find them, and they've been prosecuted. And as for me, it's very important step for justice. Yeah, and I really don't understand why we can't do this now, because for many countries it's evident that these people did it, adopted, and it's very important to give a sign anybody who try to do something, to stop, because you could be prosecuted.
Continuing speaking about International Criminal Court arrest warrants. The arrest warrant was for a war crime of forcible transfer of children. However, you mentioned the word genocide, which is another crime, and forcible transfer can be a genocide. I potentially can understand why the ICC decided to issue the warrant for war crimes, because arguably it's easier to collect evidence with regard to that. So what is your position? Should the ICC, other countries, Ukraine as well, prosecute war crimes or qualify it differently as genocide or crimes against humanity? Or is your position that it doesn't matter as long as it's done quickly and as soon as possible?
Yeah, my position is Russia commit genocide. I understand how hard to define this as a genocide now, because it should be, you should be brave enough sitting in United Nations or anywhere just to spell it, to say genocide. But for me, no doubts, it's genocide, because they the intention to annihilate Ukrainian identity. If you hear Putin or Dugin or Medvedev or all of them, they are telling that Ukraine should disappear as a nation. It's their intent. It's genocide, and what they are doing is genocide. You can come to any center and ask a child, and child will tell you its story, and you will understand that it's genocide because a child couldn't speak Ukrainian, couldn't be Ukrainian, couldn't have like my socks, yellow on blue color. Yeah, you can't, because you could be punished immediately. It's forbidden in Russia. What is this if not genocide? Because they totally change identity. They want annihilate ethnic group. It's genocide.
Thank you. Ukraine and Ukraine EU partners have been working not only to help return the children, but also seek accountability through funding, sanctions, sharing intelligence. We also discussed arrest warrants. Do you have any suggestions in terms of what else can be done by the UK, by the EU member states, by Ukraine's partners to not only return children, but also bring Russia to accountability and to bringing it to justice?
Yeah, I told that more sanctions, more support to help that kids who stay in Ukraine to survive and to provide humanitarian support, strengthening services, childcare and family services. It's very important. It's very important. Many kids living in combat zones and suffer. Every day we hear about numbers of children who've been killed. And maybe mount pressure on Russia to give us information where our children is, to have access, just to speak with them. Because I understand that it's very hard to return them, but first of all, we want to know where are they. For example, that 4,000 orphans who've been kidnapped from orphanages, from families. Where are our orphans? Innocent kids who suffer there and who have no any chance to escape, to be extracted or escape. Yeah, and maybe first of all, to demand. We need this demand from all countries. Show us them. Tell us where are they. Give us access just to speak with them, to ask them how are they and if they want to come back. Maybe we have to talk now about it more.
There were media reports also about some successes of returning from 4 to 30 children through mediation efforts with some non-Western partners, including Qatar. There were also reports of Saudi Arabia and Turkey being involved in mediation, so going through non-legal processes, but some kind of diplomatic channels. Do you see that as a potentially successful avenue for returning children?
We are grateful for any child, but what is 30 kids in comparison with the 100,000s? It's, you know, that we really, it's great that they could return 30 kids, but how many years for returning thousands this way? Yeah, and no real mechanism how we can take our kids back. We need this support. We have to find this mechanism. I don't know what mechanism could work. And this country is trying to help us. But which mechanism will work, I have no idea. I have no idea. What we are doing, I can tell that it's mechanism. We are fighting for every child, and we build like our system, but it is not, we cannot scale a number of kids. We can, if we will receive more support, we can scale, but it's not that number we need. It should be thousands every month, not 10 or 20 every month.
And one last question from me before opening it up to a Q&A from the audience. So after especially the arrest warrant, Maria Lvova-Belova stated that, again, that Russia saved these children, evacuated these children, and everyone she saved were orphans, didn't have family members, and if these children do have parents, we are open to return them. Did you have any contact or communication with Russian state official, or if that's not confidential, if you could share if the message is the same about saving, best interests, etc.?
No, we have not any contacts with governmental officials. I had some requests. I will tell you a story. And when I've been placed to the position in 2014, on position of Presidential Commissioner of Children's Rights, first who called to me was Putin's ombudsman, Astahov. And he told me, congratulations, it's after invasion. I was shocked, and let's collaborate. We are ready to help. We understand that you have some conflict in your country, but we are ready to help your kids. Our hospitals is opened. You can send your kids to Moscow. What are you talking about? You invaded us. No, it's not we. It is your war, it's your conflict. And and he told, oh, welcome to Moscow. And really, I told, what are you talking about? Okay, I understand that you can't, but I can't come to Kyiv, as you understand. Maybe let's meet in Minsk. I told, what? What do you want from me? No, collaboration. Let's do something. And it was some proposal after that from Maria Lvova-Belova. And no, we never been working with them. I negotiated in Minsk negotiation. I've seen that it's terrorist. They just want to trick you. It's Russians, just Russians. Yeah, they always want to trick you, and I don't believe in this negotiation. It's really, don't judge me, but I know who are they. Yeah, and I don't believe. They always will try to trick you. That's why. But we have to find a way. We have to find a way. That's why it's so important for us that you help in Ukraine stand, you help in Ukraine fight. Putin is a criminal, and you should only be effective with a criminal, showing him a power. And only through this, if with your support, we could be strong, we could fight, we can liberate our territories, and we can return our children. I don't believe that he will be ready to give these kids back.
And on this note, I'm opening the discussion to the audience. Please, if you have any questions, please go ahead. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. What I was wondering, how do you get to know about children? do you get contacts by family members who are in Ukraine, or I appreciate that you might not be able to say everything about that, but I'm just curious how you find out about children.
Everybody curious about it, yeah, but we are receiving from different sources, yeah, from relatives, yeah, from friends, from children who've been returned. Sometimes they telling us and they connect us with these kids. From social media, it's different ways how we can find this information. But it's only this I can tell you. That's all. Yeah.
Thank you for this information. Very valuable for all people to know. I will ask a direct question. So there are a lot of numbers in terms of children who want to return, but do you have any numbers killed, any casualties, like children who died dead?
No, we have no data. We have only official number. It's maybe 600 officially, just officially. But for example, how many children were killed in Mariupol? Who knows? How many of them were buried in forest, in the fields, and their parents? We don't know. Or on occupied territories, we don't know. Yeah, I think we will know later. It will be big number of kids. And very often journalists asking me if we know something about Russia selling these kids for organs or doing something, raping this. It's very hard to find any information. It could be true, but now Russia not allow us to know anything about these kids. We have kids who've been reporting us, who've been returned and told me that they know that in that camps, summer camps or indoctrination camps, they had girls who've been raped by Russians, and we have like now one lady in our center who'd been raped by 6 Russian soldiers, and she was paralyzed after that. Her husband hanged himself, and we with 2 kids extracted her, and next day, but her father left there, and next day Russian soldiers came to her home and told the father, if you will not return her, we will kill you, because they're really afraid that it. Yes, and it's I can tell you stories, but what is the scale of this? We don't know. But about that kids who've been placed to Russian families, what is motivation? If they hate us, they hate Ukraine, and they taking these kids. And yesterday in House of Commons, I was telling that if you taking teenager, you can receive for like a guardian, yeah, being guardian, foster, or adopt. And for example, 16, 17 years old child, first of all, you can receive financial support from the government. But if you as a parent prepare your child being a soldier, you can, and if child will be killed, as a young adult, you can receive $54,000. A Russian family can receive. What is this for poor family? It's a huge amount of money, and that's many families taking these kids just to prepare being a soldier, and this child can send this money being a soldier to a family, and then if this child dies, it's not only about Ukrainian children, it's about Russian. Maybe you know this, that many poor families sending their kids to to fight because after they send this child or young adult send into the army, they are taking credit, buying something. Yeah, it's a business, and it's win-win business. Yeah, they, through propaganda, they convince that child could be a hero, and child going to be a hero, and this family can have benefits. It's money, and Putin can have benefits, more soldiers. Yeah, and this it's Russian system.
First of all, thank you for raising this issue. I guess I have maybe two questions. The first one is a historic one. I'm wondering whether anyone has done any research into kind of what Russia is doing with the children. And the reason I'm raising that is because that's precisely what Russia did during the Second World War when they occupied Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. It transferred a lot of children from there to Russia, and similarly to Finland. And the Finnish children, as I understand it, were returned during the course of the Second World War. And they're doing, again, exactly the same thing as Ukrainian children. And I agree with you, it is genocide what they're doing, but have there been any empirical research and perhaps kind of on the ground research into why they're doing it, and how can we use it as proof effectively in the international courts? And the second question is more practical, which is that all of these children require a huge amount of support. The children you're returning, first of all, the work you're doing to return them, and then once they're here. The question is, well, Russia ought to pay for that. And is that something that everybody's turning their mind to? The sort of compensation, reparation owed to these children who have been stolen and traumatized by virtue of indoctrination, etc.
Зможете потім мені пояснити, да? Тому що
Так,
я не
я
все зрозумів.
перше питання можу відповісти.
Да.
If you don't mind, I'll answer the first question because I'm actually researching this and I have an article forthcoming on this specific topic looking into historical examples of in this specific legal issue. So I was looking into, because I think Russian actions, not only their genocide, but it's a colonial genocide. The Ukrainians have seen this before, and you're absolutely right. It's not only Ukrainians, but other nations under Russian domination, subjugation. So I've looked particularly in the examples of Baltic states and forcible transfers of Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian women and children in 1940s. But there is also example of forcible transfers and placement in special residential schools of Siberian indigenous children. So there has been a long history of transferring children specifically, but also deportations of entire nations that were considered to be against Soviet rule or Russian rule, and it extends not only to Soviet Union but even to Russian Empire. So we can look into the practices of deportations, ethnic cleansing, also deporting the local population, but also sending back Russian citizens. We now see that in Donbas area, in Crimea, in Mariupol, everywhere. And similarly, Russification is a practice that Russian Empire, Soviet Union have been practicing since 18th century, not only with regard to Ukraine, to other nationalities as well, completely erasing local indigenous languages. But if we're talking about Ukraine specifically, especially during Soviet Union, Ukrainian culture was always portrayed as a backward village culture. Ukrainian language was considered not a real language, and if someone believed that they're Ukrainian, they were considered a Ukrainian nationalist and sent to Gulag, etc. So a lot of the rhetoric is very similar and has historical roots. So at least in my opinion, in my work, this is important to understand also in international litigation and proving, for example, special intent to destroy Ukrainian ethnicity or national group as such, because it's not a new thing, it's a continuation of colonial practices of Russia. But I'll let Mykola answer the second question.
No, you're totally right. Yeah, It's true. It's a history. Many people for example, here or in United States, they don't understand these issues because it's our history. My father, only before his death, told me that his grandmother in Holodomor lost 11 kids from 13. He didn't tell me it before. He was afraid because nobody could tell this before. Yeah, it was like famine, but Russia killed it. Russia did. How many children were orphans because their parents were killed or imprisoned in Soviet Union? Millions. Who knows this? Yeah, it's our history for the last 100 years. What Soviets and Russia now are doing, it's a technology. It's a technology which was developed that years, and now they just return to this technology. That's all. Yeah.
Sorry, you had the second question, right? If you can remind us.
Yeah, sorry, the second question was about the funding, what is happening about making sure that the children are supported financially, and your services are supported financially and supporting them, and making Russia pay.
I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you. We need their money to recover our children, but I think that first of all we have to win. We have to win. Yeah, I don't want to think about it now, because that when we will win, we can receive this money, or now it's maybe more for lawyers. Maybe you can answer, yeah. But now we need support, how we can recover these kids who've been affected by the war, which services we should build. I have the answer because I'm 25 years in child protection. I was building services, and I know, and now we are building these services in local communities, and I can tell you a lot about this, how to do this, and what we are doing, and how to scale this program. That's why all time I am asking if you can provide us with financial support. We are transparent. We have decentralized services. We are working with the local government and with different governments. And we want to scale this program because this is an effective program for Ukrainian children. How rebuild their lives, how make them feel happiness. It's very important for any child. Because one more story. From my father until death, he was asking me only two things: if I feed well, if I dressed well. That's all. And never what I feel. Never. Because he was born before the World War II. He was traumatized, and only basic needs is valued. Eat well and dress well, that's all. And it could be generational trauma for our kids. We have to heal our children, protect. We have to build or raise resilient generation. What we should do now, what we should think about, and how we can help kids now to be strong.
Thank you very much. I hope you're hearing me. Thank you very much for being here and for sharing your thoughts and experiences on a very traumatic topic. I can't imagine the psychological trauma on you and your organization as well, experiencing all this. My question is, and please forgive me if I got confused, but this is a non-governmental organization, right? A network of volunteers and legal entities, etc. But I was wondering where the government stands all this process, the state apparatus, the registries, the DNAs, everything that the state can provide as a support. And despite the fact that it's a war, there are some channels of communication for the exchange of prisoners of war, etc. So where the government stays in this process is something that I wanted to ask you. And the second question, there is a war ongoing since 2014. It didn't start 2 years ago. And from your experience with these children, I understand the focus is on the newly occupied territories, not so much on Donetsk and Lugansk and Crimea. But if you can share your thoughts on whether there is the different treatment from the de facto authorities vis-a-vis the children in both the territories that were occupied in 2014, 2015, and since 2022. These children that you managed successfully to return back, I understand that from the newly occupied territories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
We have no experience of returning children from no, it's a lack of experience returning kids after 2014, because it was a different situation. Because we, like, Russia invaded us, but Russia told us that, as I told you, it's not we. It's like your conflict, and the West asked us to have this negotiation. That's why it was a lack of possibilities to return these kids, or we were waiting that through negotiation we can agree and to receive these kids, but nothing happened. And second invasion. That's why I cannot tell you like what is the difference. Different that it's more kids who've been captured, and now being hostages on the occupied territories in Russia. Many of them have been transferred to Russia, and now it is the active war, and now we are receiving these kids, and we have more evidence what happened with them. And Russia actively, before that, Russia was very afraid just to show that they are involved. But now they have like a new regions, and they are FSBs there, everybody there. They are going to each house with the weapons and threaten people, torture them, killing them. It's a different situation now. But I don't remember first question.
About the government.
About government. You know, I've been working for government many years. I cannot imagine how to be in these circumstances, because I finished my work in presidential administration 6 months before the full-scale invasion started. I understand that it's our financial system collapsed. Our child welfare system collapsed. Millions of Ukrainians were fleeing the war abroad. Millions are internally displaced people who are suffer. And it's in these circumstances, it's very hard to fix system. And especially now when we have no financial support, we are fighting for as you know, for more financial support, for not only humanitarian issues, but for ammunition, weapon, for everything, just to fight, just to survive. And I have no rights to criticize anybody. I can tell you what is good, what is not good, but I don't want it. It will not be honestly. To criticize somebody. I can only support them. I can only support. That's why what we are doing, it's supporting local government, supporting state government. We try in possible way how to cooperate, join efforts, and that's all. It is not good time for criticizing somebody. We have to survive now. We have to be together and survive. And then we can arguing about what was good, what was bad, but now just to survive, to protect our kids, our families, and liberate our territories.
Just potentially also to know that there is, of course, I agree with Mykola completely that the focus of the Ukrainian government is on military efforts. And unfortunately, sometimes humanitarian and human rights efforts are on the sort of secondary in some way. But there is the Office of Ukrainian President plan, Bring Kids Back, that are trying to also work with international partners. And there is some effort to litigate these issues internationally. So the Ukrainian government works with the International Criminal Court that is establishing office in Kiev, and they're working on prosecuting these crimes. Similarly, there is currently a case before European Court of Human Rights regarding children actually that were transferred from Donbas area in 2014. So this is a case Ukraine and Netherlands against Russia. So there are certain efforts, but as Mykola said, the war is won on the battlefield and not in the court, unfortunately. So all these efforts would potentially be more effective after the war is won.
And as you know, that governments or governmental system based on the legislation, and no international legislation doesn't work with criminals. Yeah, you know that Russia break all rules. And for example, Convention on Children's Rights. Where is this convention? Russia kidnapping children. It doesn't matter for them. And we trying with our international partners to negotiate or to just to prove something. No, it doesn't work. That's why United Nations is not effective now. I've been there. Last year I had a statement in Security Council of United Nations. And Russia is there and telling why you give him a time for speech. You know, why he spoke Ukrainian. You know, I'm telling about kidnapping children and Russia representative Nebenza. Oh, why he told 12 minutes, not 10, and why he spoke Ukrainian. What are you talking about? Yeah, it's Russia. Yeah, and I don't know. No rules. We have to find new mechanisms. We have to develop new legislation through Ukrainian case.
Perhaps last question, please.
I'd like to build on what this gentleman said. It's curious what might be Russian policy implementation in the parts of Ukraine that they've invaded, but in fact what we generally find, including from Russian sources, is that they're completely incompetent apart from being elite and brutal and violent, in Crimea particularly, so that's kind of boring. Can we, and very, very distressing, can we take you back to your hopes for child protection services in Ukraine and to the time when you were running children's services in Kiev, and what you would like children's services in Ukraine to be now and for the future? I realise it's almost impossible. You can say it's impossible to do anything in war, and you can say war gives you the opportunity to reform really fast. And how would you see, if you were running children's services in Kiev again, in the future, how would that work really well for these vulnerable children?
Time changed. If in 90s I was fighting with the human trafficking, children's trafficking, and it was a lot of street children everywhere. Now it's a different situation. And what I'm doing now is in my organization, we providing needs assessment of vulnerable families and children, and we are building services. I can tell you what I will be doing in Kyiv, because first of all we have to assess what children need there, how many internally displaced, what kind of kids need what help, and to build this system. I'm more capable now, I have more experience, and we are building with my team services in several local communities, and we are building in different time, in different way. Yeah, but that's why I can tell you what I will be doing. It may be bigger, wider discussion. Yeah, we have a clear plan, a roadmap, what we are doing. We can discuss it with you, what kind of services, how to build these services. And we are inviting different organizations. We are ready to work with everybody just to build strong childcare and family services in local communities. And I think, for me, many people talking about rebuilding Ukraine, and very few people answering what is this, because many people talking about infrastructure, we have to rebuild, building something new. No, it's about people, it's about children. If we will not be able to raise them with a new culture, raise strong kids, I'm dreaming about it. Really, I believe that we will be able to do this. We will have new country. We will really rebuild our country, because new generation will be able to create, to build democracy in our country. Yeah, it's very important. Yeah, my English is very limited to explain you what in my heart. Yeah, but maybe I will tell you in Ukrainian my feelings. Yeah. But I have clear plan. I know what to do, and now I know how to do. That's why I spent 25 years for this. And I'm not tired to continue what I did before. I'm more stronger now, and maybe more angry on that crazy guys who trying to kill us. Yeah, but we have to survive and be strong and rebuild our country. Thank you.
I think on this relatively positive note, we will conclude. Thank you, everyone.